They were about to close the coffin when suddenly something moved. At first, no one reacted. Grief can play tricks on the mind. In 2011, in a quiet village in Russia, a 49-year-old woman named Fagiliu Mukhametsyanov collapsed suddenly after complaining of severe chest pain. Her family rushed her to the hospital, but it was already too late. Doctors examined her carefully. There was no pulse, no breathing. She was declared dead. The news spread quickly. Her family was devastated. Her husband couldn't stop crying. Relatives gathered, some in shock, others already preparing for the funeral. Everything moved fast, the way it often does in small communities where death feels both sudden and routine. Her body was prepared, dressed, placed in a coffin. By the next day, the funeral was already taking place. Friends, neighbors, and family members stood around her, whispering prayers, saying their final goodbyes. The room was heavy with silence, broken only by quiet sobbing. Some people stepped closer to see her one last time. Others couldn't bear to look. Her husband stood near the coffin, staring at her face, trying to accept what had happened. Then, something felt wrong. At first, it was so subtle that no one noticed. A faint sound, almost like a breath. One of the relatives frowned, thinking it was just imagination. The room was tense, emotional. People weren't thinking clearly. But then it happened again. This time, louder, a movement. Someone gasped. All eyes turned toward the coffin. And then, her chest moved, slowly rising, falling. For a second, the entire room froze. No one moved, no one spoke. It was as if time itself had stopped. And then her eyes opened, wide, confused. Alive, screams erupted instantly. People stumbled backward in terror. Some ran out of the room, unable to process what they were seeing. Others stood frozen, their minds refusing to accept reality. Her husband rushed forward, shaking uncontrollably, calling her name again and again. She looked around, disoriented, trying to understand why so many people were crying, why she was lying in a coffin, why everyone looked at her with fear instead of relief. She tried to speak, but her voice was weak, barely there. Panic filled the room. Some people began shouting for help. Others collapsed from shock. Within minutes, she was rushed back to the hospital. Doctors were stunned. They checked her vitals again. This time, she was alive. There was a heartbeat, weak but real. No one could explain what had happened. Had they made a mistake? Had her body entered a state so deep it mimicked death? Or was it something else entirely? But the most terrifying part wasn't what had already happened. It was what came next. When she regained more awareness, she began to panic. Her breathing became faster. Her heart rate spiked. Imagine it waking up inside a coffin, hearing people crying around you, realizing you were about to be buried. The fear was too much. Her body, already weak, couldn't handle the shock. Despite the doctor's efforts, despite everything, they couldn't stabilize her. A few hours later, her heart stopped again. This time, there was no coming back. Silence filled the hospital room. The same family who had just witnessed a miracle now faced an even deeper tragedy. To this day, her story remains one of the most chilling real-life cases ever reported. A moment that should have brought hope turned into something far more disturbing. It raises a question no one wants to think about. What if someone isn't really gone when we think they are?